What's up, guys? Welcome to another live stream at Hawkeye Rides. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Miriam.
And we're going to dive into the news to start off with. First, we always like to bring up that we have memberships now, which have exclusive benefits, different bloopers, rough cuts. We're also doing shorts depending on the package that you put. And for this particular live stream, we have a goal for 5 different super chats, which will ultimately push us to go to a dealership to do a live stream there. Going into the auto news, I wanted to actually touch bases on the EPA to begin with, because I had a couple questions of a Honda Pilot, actually. The subscriber was saying that Honda is doing a great job because they still have the V6, whereas everyone else is doing a turbocharged 4. And I told him or her why that they do this. So ultimately, the EPA, it's a government that the government has set laws for the MPGs. And if you are not getting those numbers that they have set in laws, they charge the company fees or taxes. Those taxes come at the end of the year. Now they can buy credits. That's kind of a loophole in order to not pay so many fees to the government. But then the credits that you pay go to an electric company only. So they don't have any gas variant vehicles. That's why you're starting to see less V8s, V6s, a lot more turbocharged 3s, turbocharged 4 cylinders, because of these laws that have been implemented in which they have been paying a ton of fines. But companies like Honda and even Nissan, they don't really have a lot of vehicles. So another way to equate this is you add all of the vehicles that they make, you divide it by that number, and you're doing this for the MPGs. If they do not reach the number that the government says they're supposed to get, they pay a fine, and depending on how bad it is, it could be higher or lower. And like I said, they can also pay different credits to companies like Tesla, Rivian, in which that's why those companies typically stay making a lot of money, because you have vehicles like Hellcats. Now, that's another reason why they have discontinued a lot of those vehicles, because they just drank too much fuel. So even when the consumer is paying the gas guzzler tax, it's still not enough money to pay the actual fee that they have to pay to the government. As for some other auto news, we went to Volkswagen this week. It was a great time. We have the ID Buzz coming onto the channel. Awesome vehicle. We did have a lot of glitch with this vehicle, so I left every single thing in detail for the review. I'm hoping the next time around we don't have these issues. Maybe it was just because they literally just got them in the dealership, but we had a ton of issues, that especially with the computer system. And then what I did is, before and after, I went to different forums, and I've noticed that VW does have some little issues here and there with their computers, especially with the infotainment screen and the gauge cluster sometimes turning on and off and not actually working. We had that happen several times with the ID Buzz, so you'll see it in the review. I'm hoping we finished the edits, so I'm hoping that it will be up in the next day or two. We also went to Nissan. Really excited about this. We got the Kicks, we got the Murano. The Murano is awesome. We didn't get the top of the line trim, but like all reviews, I explain every single thing in full detail. The one thing that I really liked about the Murano, though, 45 grand, and it had features that's in like a $60,000 to $70,000 Infinity. I thought that was just awesome. But then, because I'm an Infinity owner, I thought it sucked, because I'm like, man, I got ripped off. But obviously, you get more warranty and better service when you go Infinity, because it's the luxury line. But then in the same aspect, when you go to the Murano, the big problem that I had with it is it has the VC turbocharged 4 cylinders. So I'm not explain too much of the review, because it's really, I had a lot of fun with it. They now have a 9-speed automatic transmission, but no more V6. So that was kind of a deal breaker for me, because even the Infiniti QX60 now for 2025 is doing that VC turbocharged 4, which adds a multi-link. And prior generations of that particular engine builds up shrapnel inside, and ultimately the engine just locks up, and you got to pay a lot of money to put a new engine in. Going back to Volkswagen, we also got the GLI. We had a ton of fun with it. It's always an awesome vehicle, and you can only get it fully loaded. So I think they do a great job with that. And we also did the Cross Sport SEL R-Line Premium. So that's the top of the line. So I tried to explain all the details of things that you don't get in the top of the line, as well as showing the actual features for that particular vehicle. And that one also no longer has the VR6 engine. They have the 4-cylinder turbocharged, which they discontinued last year. This week we're planning on going to Maserati to do the full electric Grecale. I'm also hoping that we can do a Trofeo Grecale aside with it, so that way we can do a comparison with them. I don't know if they still have one. I know they have a 24 model, and there isn't a lot of changes, so I may do the 24 and compare it against the 25 model, just so that way you guys can see the comparison, because they're very close and similar in price. Performance-wise is also really close too, so I'm actually really excited to get my hands on those this week coming. We're going to be going back to Kia, Honda, Hyundai, Toyota. We have a whole line of vehicles, plus we have a lot of exciting vehicles coming back to the channel. We're still waiting for the M5 wagon. It has not arrived in Florida as of yet. The first one that I have located is in North Carolina, which we are going to start doing traveling. We just haven't set that up yet. So hopefully, I'm thinking around maybe February, March, we're going to start looking into bringing those things to the channel, as well as some night reviews. Going back to some of the other teams that we have added, we're going to be going back to Genesis again, so that way we can hopefully bring the fully loaded G80. That was a refresh, because the one we had didn't have a lot of features. That way you can see kind of the value that you have. And any questions, any vehicles that anyone wants to see on the channel, drop a comment, let us know, so that way we can bring them to the channel, so we can kind of tailor it to make it a little bit more interesting. We're going to also try to bring a lot more comparison videos as well. I am thinking about doing some older vehicle comparisons, so maybe a year or two old vehicles. If that's something that you guys like to see, let us know, so that way we can bring that onto the channel as well. Did you want to say something, Marion? This is my daughter, so it's the first time for her on a live stream, so hopefully she's not too shy. You can say hello or something.
Hi.
Oh, there you go. And like I said at the beginning, we're doing the super chat thing, which we're trying to just bring up some money, so that way we could do some live streams at the dealership. We're also going to be doing a lot of different things in the next coming months to the channel, which we'll start putting different things on the comment tab, so that way you guys can be up to par with that. Let us know about the questions if you guys are still having some fun with that. I've been posting 2 different questions a week, so that way you guys get different details on things like who's the best-selling. I think this week we did the second best-selling truck, or second best-selling vehicle of the year, which I thought that was pretty decent, because a lot of people don't really think about GMC being the second best-selling vehicle in North America. Thank you very much for saying good job. We're also going to be going back to Porsche soon to bring some more highlights to the gas variant for the Macan, because we didn't get a chance to do one. They only had 24 models. So hopefully we'll do a comparison between the EV and the gas variant, which I'm happy that Porsche kept the gas variant with that, because it kind of keeps it like a little bit more interesting, instead of just going full EV, kind of like they're doing with the Audi line, where they're just discontinuing cars. But hey, Sean, how are you today? Anthony, Win. Okay, the RS7 I have. So I did the 2025 RS7 already. It's going to be going on the channel soon. We didn't have any changes into the interior. Last year, we got the increase of horsepower and torque, so it's just a carryover. They do have a special edition for the RS6 Avant, which we're trying to keep our eye on that. We have 3 teams now that we work with Audi, and unfortunately none of them have confirmed that they've got it yet. So as soon as they get it, they're going to let me know. We're also looking, like I said, for the M5 wagon. We have a couple teams looking into that one. I just got wind today that they do have another M5. It's a black one with red interior, so it has the, I believe it's the classic red and black, something like that. So hopefully they'll still have it. We may go there tomorrow just to see if they do. And there's a couple other vehicles that BMW are trying to bring to the channel as well. Because with all these refresh vehicles, especially with Audi, I did the RS5 competition, but it did not have all of the updates for the interior yet. So I'm thinking it's going to be probably the 26th. So maybe towards the end of the year is when we're going to actually see all of that upgrade, which I'm really excited to see that. I was a little disappointed with the suspension because when you get the competition package, it is a track package. So it changes it out. It takes, I mean, you feel everything. Like I went over a speed bump and I thought that I lost my whole body. But then once you drive it, even in the video when we were doing the edits, the camera actually bounces. So you could see that it's literally a track like performance suspension, but it's really crazy tuned. Once you drive it and you mash on that gas pedal though, you kind of forget about the suspension. I don't know if I would do that one as an everyday, but I was really happy that we had that particular one that day because the competition package, they're not really ordering a lot of those ones yet. We're also going to be bringing the S3, which is an awesome vehicle because they have increased horsepower and torque. It's actually better than the BMW variant, which I'm happy that Audi is bringing this competition because prior, which a lot of people already know, they build an excellent vehicle, but then they kind of shortchange themselves with horsepower and torque. Now, I get it. On a straight line, you're not really so much concerned with that because these type of vehicles are meant to take corners and bends. So therefore, you have a lot more fun with the vehicle. But then even their weight distribution doesn't come close to BMW, and even Mercedes is doing kind of the same thing. So now Audi has upped their game quite a bit. So I'm really excited for all those variants. It might be good to post news on current cars and upcoming cars and spy shots. Okay, yeah, definitely we'll look into that as well. Probably put those, that's usually at the beginning. Whenever we're doing the live stream, I try to go over all the news at the beginning, and then throughout, whoever asks questions will answer those questions as well. So I will start looking to put those onto the comment tab so that way you guys can see updates. With Nissan and Infiniti, the updates that we've got this week, because we were at Nissan, is basically the same thing. The merger is still kind of going on, and a lot of that is basically because of the EV. They're trying to bring a lot more EVs. None of the companies have been telling me that they're just bailing anyone out. So it doesn't look like they're suffering, even though their sales are not that good. But then you also have to take in consideration all of the payroll and everything that they're doing. So ultimately, I feel like they're not hurting as bad, and it kind of feels like they did it to maybe get some free publicity, because when you see a company and you hear that it might be going out of business in 12 months, all of a sudden everybody's looking at that particular vehicle. The next Range Rover video, I don't know. I think it's going to be probably, because we have a few of those coming onto the channel. Let me check right now. I believe we have them coming in the next week or so.
How's the Infiniti doing?
The Infiniti is all right. We still have it. I'm thinking about doing the 2-year review this week. I wanted to do it with some family members that actually drive it a little bit more than me. We just hit 30,000 miles, and I was just able to finally fix myself the actual digital rear view mirror. I am looking for a new vehicle. My son, Issa, that usually comes on the live stream, has been typically telling me, Dad, you need to go for the RS7 Sportback. And I said, well, the issue is you want to go 24 or 25 when you go to that. And everyone knows the price is about $120,000 or more. Because if you go 23 and under, you don't get the increase of horsepower and torque, nor do you have the opportunity to get a special edition. At those prices, it's just very expensive. It's hard for me to spend that kind of money. I do like the M8, and actually a good thing that you bring up the M8. So BMW is going to be discontinuing the Coupe M8 for 2026. That is huge news. So I'm hoping that we can get some 25s. So far, we don't have any 25s on the lot or through my teams that I've been looking with. They're going to keep the convertible, and they're going to keep the Grand Coupe. I'm assuming the reason why they did that is so that way they can push the M4 competition coupe, because they also offer the coupe and the convertible. Then I did hear a little bit of talk, but I didn't have full verification on this yet. I'm still waiting to go back with my team, but I was hearing that BMW for the M4 may go full electric only in the next year or two. Not 100% sure on that though, because the source is a little shaky. And when I asked my BMW team, they haven't got back with me yet. So before I usually give that type of information. I try to hold back. So again, it could go that route, but I'm not 100% sure yet. The Panamera, it's awesome. Porsche does a great job. Just again, when you're at $120,000, $140,000, I just don't want to spend that kind of money right now on a new vehicle. So I'm thinking about getting something pre-owned, so that way I can get a little bit of a deal, hopefully save that 30%. The A5 Sportback, awesome vehicle. I prefer the RS5 Sportback. That's actually one of my favorite. The A5, though, you can get an incredible deal, especially if you go certified. Awesome. Hey, James, how are you today? See, you have heard anything about this certain Lincoln? Yes. So Lincoln, I did today. We have a Lincoln, the Navigator. They just got a full refresh. I'm working with the Lincoln team, but unfortunately, it's only here for the weekend, so we're not going to be able to get our hands on that one. As for the Continental, they didn't bring anything up because they were so like, we got the Navigator, and I was like, okay, can we do anything? And they said it's only for display and it's only for today. So I think they're going to stop it at like 7 o'clock. So there was no way we could do it. The SQ8, awesome vehicle. You're supposed to be reading the questions. The SQ8 is an awesome vehicle. Infiniti, I don't feel is struggling as much as people proclaim, but they increased their price, so it's hard. Like the new QX80, it's 120 grand. There's rumors that the Audi Q8 e-tron. Yes, I said that actually last week. So the e-tron Q8 Sportback and regular, 100% they're discontinued. It's because 1 second. So Sean, it's because they closed the plant. That's what Audi is saying. But I would assume it's also because of sales. So they are discontinuing that variant. What was the question? The Cayenne GTS? It's, again, Porsche, they do a great job. I did look at one, a pre-owned one for a 2024 model, which is crazy. It's already pre-owned. And surprisingly, the price was like 110. And when you look online at a GTS, it's a lot of money. The X5M Competition, I actually really like that car, as well as the RS Q8. Those are kind of my two favorite vehicles. Unfortunately, both two of them, they're very hard to get. So even the X5M Competition, last year, I think we were only able to source maybe 3 or 4 for the channel. This year, I think we've had maybe 2 or 3, which is a lot more.
What about the X3M?
So the X3M Competition, they discontinued that. They only have an X3M50 variant, so it's not a full M. It does have a lot of performance. I'm just not so intrigued by the interior. The exterior, it looks good. Ultimately, I feel like BMW has shifted gears to push people into a different price segment. So what I mean by that is like the X1, 2, 3, they're not doing any M's. The X4, they are going to discontinue after this year. So it makes you go into the 5 and 6. And then the 7 doesn't even have an M either. They have an M60i.
BMWs make the best cars.
BMW makes a great car. Surprisingly, their weight distribution is awesome on almost every one of them. So I really appreciate the geometry that they do for their vehicles. The X4, I was really shocked about that they're discontinuing it, but that's BMW just kind of making less trims. And Mercedes is also going the same route with cutting some of their trims. Are there any classic cars that interest you? I'm watching now and seeing so many cars. So I do like classic cars. Funny enough, I actually started reviews with a few classic cars whenever I was in the restaurant business. I had some customers that had some, so we did reviews with them. If it's something that you guys are interested in, I can go back and throw in some of those as well to kind of mix it up.
You should get a
X6. So the X6, I like the X5 a little bit better because you get more cargo. The back of it, when you drive it and have it in your possession, you like it. But then for me, I think the X5 looks a little bit better. If I was going to do the coupe style SUV, I would go SQ8 or RSQ8. 911 and the 3 Series, great vehicle. M5, I wouldn't do the new M5s. I'm not happy about the plug-in variant. That's kind of like the XM. I've done a few reviews on them, and surprisingly, we had like 4 or 5 at one time. And I just feel like they went the wrong route. I like plug-in hybrids, but when I'm going for a performance vehicle, I feel you should have an option to either get it or not. That I think would be more ideal than just saying you can only have a plug-in M. It just doesn't make sense. It is heavy, but man, that M5 is amazing. Like, I've done the review on it, and I was shocked. The weight distribution is really precise. It doesn't have hardly any lift whenever you're taking the bends, and you don't feel it when you're mashing the gas. But again, it would be better in my perspective that they offered you a plug-in and a non-plug-in. That way you have that traditional M buyer, and then you have, I guess, a new generation buyer. Because obviously with a plug-in, anything that's battery operated, you're going to get a lot more power. But then it's kind of like cheating too, like having rear steering to get a perfect 50-50 weight distribution.
What about a G-Wagon?
So the G-Wagon is an awesome vehicle. I did look at one actually today kind of briefly, 23 model. So it's a couple years old because the 25s are starting to come on the lot, but it's very hard to find them. But the pricing of those are like 150, 170. At that price, it just opens up a lot of variants. The X7, I did talk about the X7 and the Range Rover both, and both two of them, I think they're awesome vehicles. If you go to the new Range Rover, you can get the BMW engine in it. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds when you go Range Rover, in the sense of getting that soft plush material. But if you want that more of a performance drive, it still kind of goes into the X7 because you can feel the drive. So whenever you're in these performance vehicles, one thing to take in consideration, it's not just a sports suspension. It's also the way the geometry is whenever you're taking the bends and whenever you're driving it. You can actually feel the whole vehicle shifting and doing these moves for you. So it's awesome.
What about a
I wanted a Land Rover 90. Yeah, I did too. The Land Rover 90, I did a V8. It's on the channel, and I almost bought it. I think that was amazing. The 90 V8 was the way to go for me. Even on the review, I was so excited about it. I think it was right after I did the 392 Wrangler, which is one of my favorite vehicles. I wanted to buy one of those, but MSRP is like 70 grand, but try to find it. The dealerships want like $100,000, and it's not worth paying more money. I don't believe in any dealership paying a dollar more than the MSRP is, especially in the times we're in. A lot of the dealerships and teams that I work with also say that they'll lower the price and do deals, and I'm not selling them. I'm just saying that's why I work with these teams, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they would add money on a depreciating asset, especially when you're at that high of a price.
You should get a 7 Series.
7 Series. Well, I mean, they are awesome, and you got that 30-ish inch touchscreen TV, which we have some reviews on that. A lot of power in the vehicle, smooth suspension, 0 to 60s are fast. I kind of like the S8 a little bit better, though, with the performance drive and the feel. Every time I drive that vehicle, I've even had my son Issa, you've heard him say the S8 a few times, where he's like, he didn't believe me. So in one of the reviews I did, it was funny. A Mustang pulled up next to me. It was like a 5.0. And I even say on the camera, I'm like, this Mustang has no idea what he's next against. Now, in the same aspect, a 5.0, you can soup them up and be super fast. But this is more or less a Lamborghini detuned engine. I mean, I think the 0 to 60 is like 3.4 seconds. It's nuts. For that long of a vehicle, it's crazy. And it is actually the fastest in its class. Mashed on the gas, he was a dot. And it's funny enough, we had the same experience this week with Volkswagen. I did a Jetta, the GLI, like I was saying at the beginning, and there was a Kia, what was it? The K5 GT line pulled up next to me. I floored it, and you see him at the end passing me because I've already hit over 60 miles an hour. I said, man, he's a dot in my mirror. It's just funny. The 4 Series, awesome vehicle. S-Class, I like the S-Class. Mercedes is kind of moving away from the S-Class a little bit more so. They're, like I said, starting to change some of their lineup. With Mercedes, I was actually talking about different vehicles this week with my family, and I said some of the vehicles that we review, I find it funny because I've had check engine lights, and on certain vehicles, I've never had a check engine light. And it's not because I mashed the gas or this or that. I may have a check engine light just by starting the vehicle. Now, that being said, it could be the battery is dying, But then when you're talking about a car that could be $100,000, it kind of irritates you a little bit.
How much more comfortable is the Extra 40i versus M60i when both in comfort? What percent difference is there, would you say?
In comfort mode, you also have to put the seats in perspective here. So if you do the leather seats, I would say it's about a 17% difference for the 40 to the 60. If you do the non-leather seats, I have to say it's a little bit. Actually, they're about the same. Well, the comfort though. So the comfort to the seat is a little bit different. I feel like the leather, especially when you get the Murano leather, that seat itself is the most soft seat for BMW. When you go to the non or their veganized leather or something like that is the terminology, it feels a little bit more firm. So I would say you lose about 3 to 5% there if you're going from the veganized to the leather. If you're going to the performance, like the M60 to the X40, the difference in the drive is probably around 17%, not quite 20%. So it's very minimal. But if you're comparing the M60 to the X5 or to the M competition variant, you will tell a difference because that suspension's a lot more stiff.
Do you like the GLS?
I do. GLS is awesome. The 63 is one of my favorite vehicles. We just posted that one, I think yesterday or the day before. Very fun vehicle. Pricing though and depreciation, you can feel them a lot when it goes to the GLS.
Should I have specified ride comfort like the drive feel?
So the drive feel, well, that's what I was saying about the 17-ish percent. You'll feel less, it's a little bit less than 20% in the drive feel. The seat is about 2 to 5% difference. So if you go veganized, it's going to be a little bit more firm. If you go Murano leather, it's going to be a lot more soft because they just tailor it a little bit better. It's still stretched. So anytime you get a leather seat, unless you go into like Ferrari or Maserati, those are the only vehicles that do not stretch the leather. Even Rolls-Royce stretches their leather.
Do you like Tesla?
I do like some of Tesla. I'm not really a big EV fan. If it is something that you guys would like to see on the channel, I'll start bringing a little bit more of Teslas to the channel as well as Rivian. It just, with certain brands, I'm not a huge fan with them. What vehicles have you most push back seats when you floor it? So James is asking the most power basically when I floor the vehicle. That the AMG 63, the coupe, so the 2-seat, that one had a crazy amount of power. Like I just stayed planted. The Jaguar F-Type SVR, which is now the R, but unfortunately they discontinued. That one, I think that one had the most G-force besides the Tesla Plaid S. But for gas variants, I think it would be the Jaguar. That thing was just so much. I actually had one of our teammates in the vehicle with us when we were flooring it, and we couldn't lift our heads off the headrest. It was crazy, James.
Would you get an F-Pace?
I do like F-Pace. I think awesome. But because of the way Jaguar is going, I'm just waiting to see their direction because I feel like they're not going the right direction. And now that we have a new administration coming into office, everybody knows that this administration, and I'm not talking Democrat, Republican, I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just saying they care more about gas, which is fine. I care more about the technology. So what I mean by that is we're still kind of going backwards. We're just adding turbos or supercharges, but we're not being innovative. At least with Nissan back in 2019, they finally came out with that multi-linkage to get that VC turbocharged 4-cylinder. So it'd either be a 4-cylinder power to a 6-cylinder power, meaning a 4-cylinder diesel for MPGs or a V6 for MPGs. But even that, we're putting technology the wrong way. And I feel like ultimately now they're just doing quick fixes, kind of like an extension cord. So with Jaguar going that route, I just don't feel confident in the brand so much. I do love their performance line. I think they do an excellent job, and I'm very disappointed that they have dropped pretty much everything in it. We are going to be going back to Jaguar, so we'll have some more F-Pace and also hopefully some more SVRs on the channel, because it is a little bit harder to get the SVRs. And are F-Pace popular? They
F-Type.
The F-Type is somewhat I don't really see a lot of them on the road, actually. It just depends on the area you're at.
Do you think they'll get rid of M comp for X5 next generation like they did with the X3?
I don't believe so, but I do see them going plug-in hybrid, because that's where BMW is going. They're focusing all on this electric / plug-in hybrid variant. Now, the XM being discontinued in another year-ish, that was a huge thing for me, because I thought, wow, you literally just came out and you discontinued it. But then I'm thinking of like the i8. They kind of did a similar thing with that. They made a vehicle that's so futuristic and advanced, but yet it's not necessarily the time for it. And for the XM, it was the time for it. Now, going back to the question, like I said, they're doing these plug-in hybrids. I hope that they still offer a non-plug-in hybrid, because that, I think, would be the best way. So you have two different tiers to choose from.
Would you get a X4 M comp?
The X4M comp is actually the best weight distribution SUV they make. It's a perfect 50-50. 0 to 60, I believe, is like 3.4 seconds. It might be a few tenths here and there off. Top speeds are crazy. And it literally is like a car, but an SUV, and it's already track worthy. And yet you get it all in around $88,000. And surprisingly, it's the only vehicle that BMW will actually discount on an M. So if you are looking to get a discount on a true M, this is the last year for the X4, you may want to consider it. For me, the back seat is just a little bit too small. If I was going to go that route, I might as well just get a sports car.
What about a X2?
The X2, power-wise, is awesome, because they have increased it a little bit, and the styling is really cool. They don't offer a full M. They have an M35i. I think it's a nice car, but again, the back seat is very small, and if I'm going that route, personally, I want to get a convertible, so that's why we're looking at the M4 competition convertible, and also looking at a few other variants, kind of comparing with that.
Do you like the Macan Eve?
The EV Macan, I have the review on it. I actually did like it a lot, but the particular one we had was more of a base trim, and then it bumped the price with the features to right at $100,000. And I actually complained to Porsche and my team after I gave them the car. I said, look, this is an awesome car, guys. Great, but what the hell are you doing putting $30,000 of features? If you're going to do that, go to the next trim. That way you get some of those features in there. Why would you do this to the customer? Because even when I got it, I was kind of skeptical. Like, I looked online and I'm like, what the heck, it's $100,000? But it's not the top, it's not even the middle trim. Then I looked at the features and I thought, that's crazy. But it is an awesome vehicle. Good power, very quiet. Interior, it's a Porsche. The Rivian, do I like the Rivian? I do. The truck, I think, is awesome. Especially they have that pull out between the bed and the cabin. Only truck that does this, where you could have literally like a picnic in it. I mean, it's literally something that is awesome. I think they do a great job with their vehicles, also with range and charging times. Just if you have an accident with a Rivian, one problem is it's literally like you'd have to fix almost the whole car. There was a forum where a customer just did a little scratch on the back of his bumper, and it literally was like Rivian was going to total, or the insurance was going to total, because they said it was like $40,000-$50,000. He ended up fixing it himself, so they didn't total it.
Do you like the M3?
The M3, yes, awesome vehicle. I prefer the M4 because it's the coupe, and it just feels a little bit more sporty. It is a bump in price, though. Performance-wise is good. The M3, you can get it with the competition or without. Interior-wise, is a little tight also. I feel the M4, even though they're basically kind of the same, I just feel that the space is a little bit more so in the interior. I should get an M3. Well, we're still thinking about the M4 competition convertible, and maybe an M440i convertible, just to save maybe $20,000, because That all in, you're at like $70,000, $80,000. If you go into the M4 competition, you're at like 105 if you have the carbon exterior package. Now, if you get them pre-owned, drop $20,000 for the M440. But when you go M4 competition and you go to a pre-owned, unfortunately, they're not dropping that much.
Are you still considering the M8?
The M8 is honestly, that's my absolute favorite, but it's 160 grand. It's really hard to swallow the price. And because even in the used cars, you're still looking at like 120 to 130. At that price point, I mean, you can start getting even pre-owned exotic cars. Certified, well, I mean, again, it's about 120, 130. You'll get an extra year of warranty. It's just, it's a lot of money. And they haven't really done too many changes, which I'm actually happy that they haven't done a lot of changes to the M8, because once they start integrating the new changes to the 8 Series, it's going to change the vehicle. Ultimately, they're going to start probably discontinuing things as well, kind of like they did with the 6.
What about the 8 Series M, the second level?
The second level, so like the the M850, that is an awesome vehicle. Hopefully they don't discontinue it, because they did discontinue the M550, which was the best vehicle pricing you could get, because that was like under 100 grand, whereas the M5 would be like 120 at that time. Ultimately, they're just kind of making it where you either get one or the other, and they're not giving you like a M performance variant. They are popular vehicles, but then you have to think in perspective from the auto industry. If they're giving you a detuned M and they're changing just, some of the suspension, they're changing some of the things underneath the hood. So it is quite a bit of differences, but power wise, you still get the same M engine, just detuned. So you could theoretically do everything that a true M has in your M Sport variant. It only makes sense that they start discontinuing that, or they only give you that like they do in the X1, 2, 3. The 4, they still have an M for the X4.
So what's your favorite BMW?
M4 and M8. The M4 is a discounted M8 price. That's the way I feel about it, because you can get the M4 and it's only like a couple maybe, I think it's like 2, maybe 4/10 of a second slower than an M8. And it's literally 60 grand cheaper. Doesn't make any sense why they do that kind of difference in price.
Would you do a X7?
Unfortunately, no, because it's too big for some of my family. If it was kind of smaller, I hate to say like have an X5 to X7. So the X5 used to have a third row option. They discontinued it back in 23, I believe. Yeah, 23. So because of that, and even having that extra third row, it would be too tight in the X5, because the X5, it has enough room for the second row, but realistically, the way BMW does it, you kind of have to go to the X7. But going to the X7, well, now you're at like Cadillac size. It's a huge vehicle. So for most of my family, it's just too big. Like today, I was actually using the Infiniti and I was trailering, which I have some video clips of it that we're going to add to the 2-year review for the Infiniti QX60. And one thing that I will say is, with family in the car, the whole time they're just like, "Oh my God, you're going to do this." I'm like, it's just a trailer. It's not a big deal. A lot of people trailer vehicles. I used to trailer a boat, so I know how to trailer. And I was showing, some different maneuvers and this and that. And I would say the first hour of driving, the person next to me was just like, "Oh my God." I'm like, I didn't do anything crazy. I even gave extra car links in front of me just to make them a little bit happier.
So I have a question. Which is bigger, the Escalade or the regular Range Rover?
The regular Range Rover is going to be smaller. When you go into the Range Rover Sport, it starts getting a little, well, they have a long wheelbase. So that one will be more comparable, and it'll be just maybe a few inches here or there. Wider, I would say, I think the Escalade, if I'm not mistaken.
It's your wife, and that she's from Europe, so they don't drive huge TVs.
Ultimately, my wife was in the car and she was just shocked. That was her talking in the
She
background,
gets scared a lot.
because she's from Europe. She doesn't like wide or long, tall vehicles. So that's why we have a QX60. And that's why we thought about doing like a SQ8 or an RSQ8 or a SQ7 even, which is wider. The Escalade, I believe, is wider by about maybe an inch or so.
Would you do a Escalade?
It's just too big. Again, I have family that's from Europe, as you heard. She can't drive something that long, and the everyday vehicle is hers. So ultimately, until I get a sports car for them, I don't think I'll be able to get a longer vehicle like that. And even getting a longer vehicle, in some cases, I don't see that I would need it because it's just too big. I think the QX60 and even like an X5 is really big enough in the interior. Going into these third rows that are larger, I mean, I've had people like literally the QX60 filled up, and we still had a ton of space. We also have the tow hitch. So what I did to even supplement more room is I just went to, I think it was Harbor Freights. I bought one of those little not wagons, those little things that you put on the back, looks like your handicap or something. And we put all of our luggage outside. So we were able to drive all the way to Pennsylvania, and we drove all the way back like that. And all of us had a lot of room with captain seats. So it's awesome to get these bigger vehicles like an Escalade, like the Wagoneer, but in the same category, they do optimize a ton of space in smaller variants. Even going into like the Atlas, for instance, that's one of the best in class for leg room for the third row. Even like I just did the ID Buzz just a few days ago. The third row, I mean, literally, I had like a foot of room. I'm 6'3". So when I'm sitting there, I thought, my God, that's just so much room in this car. Now, even cargo wasn't bad. I think VW quotes 145-ish cubic feet of storage, which is crazy. But then it's not really a true van either because like it doesn't have that storage in the lower. And I show how to take the seats out in the third row. It took kind of forever. It actually took me about 40 minutes to do some of the cameraing and the actual movements of taking those seats out to show it.
No comments.
No comments. All right. There we go.
What about a Discovery?
The Discovery Sport is cool. The full box Discovery, again, it's a long vehicle. Pricing, though, surprisingly, you can get them pretty inexpensive. So they start usually in the $60-ish thousand price point, which for me as a reviewer, I was kind of shocked to see that they actually had that because one of my teams would only give me $100,000+ Land Rovers. And I used to say, man, like every car you give me is $100,000-$200,000. What the heck is this? So when I linked up with another Land Rover team, which we have like 4 or 5 now, they gave me inexpensive ones. So it's funny, I gave them the keys and I was like, man, it's only $66,000. That's awesome. And they're like, you want to buy it? And I was like, no. It was just because usually when I'm doing these Defenders or Discoveries, they're all $100,000. So I saw that. I was like, oh my God, they actually make somewhat affordable Land Rovers. So it's just it was a little funny for me.
What about a Defender with the third row?
The Defender with the third row, it's very tight in the third row. It's more of a outside looking car, meaning the inside is kind of an acquired taste. So it's kind of like somebody liking feta cheese, right? Some people like it, some people don't. I like it, but some of the family doesn't like it. I think it looks good too. I mean, it's a purposeful vehicle. So the whole interior is meant to be where you can open the doors in sub-degree weather and it won't mess up the infotainment screen, the gauge cluster, the steering wheel, the seats, the dashboard. They literally have it where you could go sub-degree weather.
What about a Range Rover Sport?
Pricey. They start around 90 grand. And again, it's a big vehicle. It's just to the point where I need to have something more of QX60 and under for the size. We are even thinking about getting something that may not be a third row, but again, we're waiting on Infinity. Supposedly, the rep that is working with me for either a buyback or to pay me off to shut me up, she is now wanting me to make an interview with her so I can see what's going on. No Urist on the channel. No, we don't have any Urist on the channel. We did go to Lamborghini a few weeks ago in Sarasota. We met with our team, and unfortunately the team, I actually mentioned it, I believe, last week. So all the Urists are sold out up to 26. So we would have to do pre-own, and the team member that we met was not the nicest person. So now I'm going back to my other reference to reintroduce me to someone else because I don't usually like to put on the channel people to give them referrals and they're rude to me because then how are they going to be to somebody that may even buy a vehicle off the channel? Has Issa narrowed down his search for vehicles? So Sean is asking if Issa's narrowed down his search for vehicles. Right now, he's back kind of all over the place. He was looking at Audis. Now he's looking at BMWs. And then he's even been telling me what other vehicles, like all
He's
types.
just going through some phases.
Yeah, he's
Vehicles.
really crazy. I don't understand where he's went to. The Levante, awesome vehicle. You get a detuned, basically a Ferrari engine in it if you get the Modena S, which is awesome. But unfortunately, they haven't done a refresh for quite a while. So you can get an older variant when you go that route and save a ton of money. We actually were going, when we went to buy this Infiniti, we were going to get a Levante Modena S that had the Ferrari engine. And unfortunately, she turned it down for the Infiniti. So after we bought the Infiniti, we drove it back to the Maserati dealer in DC, and we showed them. They loved the Infiniti. They were like, wow, we never seen this one because it's the autograph. And we also changed the wheels. So we have 22-inch wheels. We have somewhat of it blacked out. I do have a couple reviews of it already on the channel with different comparison. And
Which car depreciates the most?
it kind of depends because you'll feel more of the depreciation when you're at like $100,000 price point. So usually what happens with that is if you get a $100,000 car and it depreciates 25, 30%, well, now it's about $70,000. So you feel it a lot more so than a Toyota. That's $30,000 with roughly the same depreciation. My favorite third row SUV performance, it's between the X7 M60i and the SQ7. I like the SQ7 in the sense of it's smaller, but I like the X7 in the sense that it's more reasonable for the third row.
Do you like the Discovery Sport?
The Discovery Sport is nice. The pricing of one, I actually took Issa to do a review with the Discovery Sport, and he was shocked at the price. When he saw that it was over 60 grand, he said, wow, that's a lot of money. And I said, that's one of the issues that I have with some of Land Rover, Range Rover. It's kind of like that you're getting your feet wet with the brand, but you're not quite there. So I feel like the Discovery Sport should be more in the $50,000 pricing fully loaded instead of like 60 to near 70,000, because at that price, you can entertain the Velar, in which that's an awesome vehicle, and the pricing to that isn't actually that bad when you're considering you could get a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder. The 6-cylinder is what I recommend, and you're around 88-ish for the HSE, which they came out a couple of years ago with that one. And unfortunately, they don't do a SV anymore. They stopped that in 20, but awesome vehicle.
Would you do a Q7?
Q7, yeah, like I said, the SQ7 is where I would go. You like an Audi?
You look like an Audi guy.
Well, thank you. We did a Q7 with our new Audi team in Lakeland. Awesome team. They also gave us the RS6 Avant, which I posted a Instagram video. We're starting to do some more videos on Instagram and TikTok, so check those out. I believe the tabs are at the homepage of Hawkeye Rides. So that way I'm going to try to post maybe 3 or 4 videos of shorts there. And then also with the memberships, we also throw in shorts as well.
Would you do an A8 or a A6?
Oof. Because of the pricing, I would say go to the I would say go to the S6, because then you can get, it's kind of the A8 pricing and you're getting a little bit more performance. I prefer the RS6 Avant, but if I'm at those pricings.
What about an A4?
A4 is awesome. The S4 is a sleeper, which is an amazing vehicle. When you go into the A's, one thing to take in consideration, nothing wrong with them, but because they do sell a lot more of them, in some cases, you can have some technical problems here and there, which usually the dealership takes care of and fixes relatively quick. But you don't usually have those same little kinks when you're going into the S or the RS, because they don't sell as many of them.
What about a Q5?
Q5. We did a SQ5 back with the team in Clearwater. The Q5, I actually recommended it to my neighbor. He had a pre-owned deal, which was awesome. And if you get maybe like the Prestige. Yeah, I think it's a great everyday vehicle. Very quiet, very comfortable. It's actually one of the most quiet in class. Peter is asking,
Audi Q8 Prestige or X5 40i executive package?
oh, that's a tough one there. So I think you're gonna have. I would probably go to the Q8 Prestige. Now, with the Prestige, do they have more packages added, or are you just asking the two basic, meaning the Prestige versus the executive package? Because they also add other packages like the cold weather package. You can get the technology package. They have a few things. So if you're adding all of those things, I would say go to the X5 because you're going to get a better value. But for when you go X5, one thing that a lot of people will tell you is it's going to have a little bit more of a rigid drive. It's kind of more sporty. I like that drive because I personally drive a sports car daily, but sometimes it irritates me because when I'm drinking my coffee, my mug is shaking. Because if you're just driving like this, you know what I mean?
Mom hates those cars.
Yeah. That's,
It's like always going
what
on.
about an A3? A3 is a great vehicle. I mean, so when I did the Jetta GLI, I actually touched bases with the A3 because the GLI is like an awesome value vehicle. I think if you're at that price, you may want to look at the Jetta GLI because, I mean, hands down, you're going to have a little bit more fun with the vehicle. The Cayennes, they're very cool vehicles. Like I said multiple times, the GTS is kind of one of my favorites, a little bit of a sweet spot in the pricing for what you're getting bang for your buck. But then the same aspect, when you're looking at that price, you could entertain an SQ8, save over 20 grand, go on a vacation, because obviously you can afford it at a $100,000 price point, and you have that exceptional drive. I think the problem with Audi and Porsche, and every time I talk to both of those teams, sometimes they're like next to each other. I even tell them, I say, dude, like, what the heck are you guys thinking? Why would you make Audi have so much performance and so much value, and then you overcharge it on the Porsche? I get it. Porsche's great. Don't get me wrong. I really do like Porsche. I would love to have a 911. I think they're just amazing vehicles. But in the same aspect, why would you give so much value to the Audi? Because if you go Audi like an RS7, an RS6, you go the RSQ8, all of those vehicles have increased their horsepower and torque where they're literally almost to Lamborghini status. They're only like 20, 30 horsepower less. In some cases, that might not even be the case, which is crazy. And you're at literally like half the price. You could buy two of those, a his and hers. That's just insane. And then with Porsche, you're talking another $20,000, $30,000. And I understand the service is going to be better, but you're getting the same warranty. So would I want to go that extra step just to say I have a Porsche? It's hard in some categories because they have increased the price. And that was a problem that Maserati did a few years back because the Levante was actually one of the best deals in class. And then all of a sudden they found that out and they raised their price to like $10,000 overnight. Will plug-in hybrid kill the M5? I don't know. I don't think that the plug-in hybrid will kill it, but I think that it's losing interest. I've noticed that they're starting to get a few more than the standard M5 that they used to have. Like the M5 competition before, whenever I would see it, my team would have it, they would call me because they didn't get a lot of them. Now it's starting to be, I mean, they don't have a lot of them yet, but from what I'm gathering, they're going to start having a bunch on the lot. What about a Q8? Q8's a great vehicle. I mean, like I was saying, I would go Q8 Prestige. I think you get a great value for it. But if you have to tack on a lot of the other features, you may want to look at some other variants like Mercedes or BMW.
The X5 and Q8 drive more comfortably and faster than my new RX 350.
Thanks for the help. Q8 Prestige is
Prestige.
a goal. Brand new Porsche Cayenne is still 20, 30K more. That's true, Peter. That's what I'm saying, like $20,000 to $30,000. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you are in that price category, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I'm not discouraging people from going to Porsche. I'm just saying that's one thing that I feel Volkswagen didn't think of when they made their lines. I mean, you have Volkswagen, they do some performance, and then Audi goes way beyond the performance level they should go. And then you got Porsche that in some cases is less performance than Audi. And then you got Lamborghini that's nearly competing with Audi. So when you put all of these and it's still underneath the same family, and even Bentley, so you go to a Bentayga, I mean, you're getting 2-3 miles per hour faster than an Audi RS Q8. It just doesn't make sense.
Which do you like better, a Scion or an X5?
A Cayenne.
Cayenne.
I would say, I mean, they're both very great vehicles. If I'm going to the base ones, though, I would go probably X5. Do most people in these high price points work in tech? What I've noticed is, so I was outside of several of my teams sometimes when I'm waiting for like an exclusive vehicle. And one guy came up to me. He bought a 911 RS GT3 RS, $250 thousand. This was last year, so the price has increased quite a lot more than that. So it was like 250, almost 300 grand, somewhere in that price point. So he was asking me how he should spec it out. He actually already ordered it, but he said I can add and change features. So I was giving him some tips and whatnot. He ended up, I think, at 275 for his. He pulled up in like a 1989 or a 1990s Nissan Frontier with flip-flops, just a regular guy. So I asked him what he did, and he was actually a former doctor. He's getting ready to retire, but most cases, it's all over. I mean, you really can't gauge what type of position somebody has when it comes to these vehicles, because some are business owners, some are in tech, some they might just work a 9 to 5 at a bank, but obviously not like a teller. They're probably doing more into financing.
What do you think about the Acura?
Hold on, right here.
Yeah, that's
Jim.
What do you
Jim
think
from New York.
What do you think about the Acura RDX 2.0 turbocharged engine compared to a Lexus RX 350?
Which is better vehicle? Please explain. So I like the RDX, and it's funny enough, when I was pulling into my house after I dropped the wagon off I had to pick up a scaffold. I was saying how most people that own an Acura RDX, they drive it like fast because the performance of the vehicle is great. The RX 350, it's okay, but it's not going to give you that same wow factor. When you get behind the wheel of it, it just has a lot more momentum. The torque to it at the low end, it's really good. And even once you pass 60, you can still floor it and keep going. And that's one thing with these smaller turbocharged engines, it's usually hard to get that. So I think Acura and Honda itself do an excellent job with that, the way they distribute the torque. Because when you go into Mazda with a 4-cylinder turbo, if you haven't driven it, this is basically what happens. You have a lot of torque up to maybe 50, 60 miles per hour. But once you pass that, the car seems to kind of die.
Really?
It still goes.
How is the reliability?
Hold on. I'm obsessed with it. How is the reliability on the Acura? So with the RDX, with my teams, they're going to tell you that it's, bulletproof. Ultimately, when you have any turbocharged engine, especially a smaller one, the good thing about the smaller one is you're going to be hitting a higher RPM to get the car motivated, meaning 2.5 to 3 RPMs almost all the time. So you're blowing out all the carbon. It's not going to build up in the engine. Whereas when you get into like a turbocharged 6 or a twin turbo 6, sometimes people don't even hit 2.5 RPMs. So that's why they start locking up the engine, because all that carbon just builds up inside the engine. So reliability for the RDX, it's actually a pretty solid vehicle overall. The transmissions are pretty solid. The interior isn't too bad. It does feel a little bit more sporty, but I feel like they're trying to go that route when you go to the RDX, especially if you get like an A-spec to it. It just has that look. I feel for pricing and what you're getting, it's awesome. Because when you go into the MDX and you type in or you tick on the A-spec, you're at over $60-some thousand. But when you go into the RDX A-spec, you're probably about 10 grand cheaper, give or take. And you have a little bit more of a wow factor. In the MDX, you got to go to the Type S in order to get that same wow factor.
Do you like the Acura?
The Acura, I do like Acura. I think they make a great vehicle. I wish they had more vehicles like the TLX when they discontinued it. I was a little disappointed because it was one of those vehicles that it felt fast, especially because of the transmission. They did a dual clutch transmission, which was awesome, but the interior was very outdated. Do dealerships try to recruit you? Yes. Dealerships all the time, they are asking or they hint to me how they need somebody, this and that, because I I really love what I do. So I know a lot about different vehicles and I try to know different specs and details as well as I drive them. And several of them offered me multiple different jobs. My Audi team has offered me several times. BMW has offered me. Toyota's offered me. Um, and even Hyundai, I've just told them, I like what I do because I don't sell the vehicle. I explain the goods and the bads, and I'm straightforward. I'm not biased. Even though I may like a particular vehicle or brand, I still will be a straight shooter with the audience because I feel it's really important that somebody understands that there's always going to be a better vehicle out there, but these are the essence or the pros to this particular vehicle, and this is the cons to it as well. Would I get this vehicle if I was in this price segment? Then usually I'll say yes or no.
Do you help people buy cars?
Yes, I have helped quite a bit. And even in this channel, we've had several people buy from my teams. One person, Zach, which I don't know if he's ever been on any of the live streams, but I talked to him quite a bit. He's bought maybe 5 or 6 vehicles, which he just keeps buying vehicles. He's bought 2 Land Rovers. He's bought 2 Acuras. And I'm just like, wow, you want to buy me a car too?
What kind of deals do dealers get?
So if you were to buy a vehicle from me, I could potentially give some deals on certain of my teams. They have opened up that door and they're like, if you sell this, we'll give you a few $100s. If you sell this, we'll give $1,000. Again, I don't sell the vehicle, but if somebody were to inquire it, asking questions, then, ultimately I can link you in with the team and then we can try to get you whatever discount that you prefer to get.
Have you helped people buy cars from like different states?
Yes, I actually did. I ended up having a couple friends that they ended up becoming friends afterwards. They were from Texas. They just moved back to Texas. What part of Texas was there is?
Does not know.
I don't remember what part of Texas they're in. I actually just talked to them on WhatsApp. Yeah, they're in Dallas. I just talked to them on WhatsApp 3-4 days ago. They bought a Mercedes. I helped them work out a deal with a Mercedes. It was funny because he was looking at a Maserati or a Mercedes for his son. And I said, well, and it wasn't like he was looking at like a 20-30 grand one. I said, first of all, service on all of those vehicles are expensive. He ended up getting a C300 with the check engine light, but because of me helping him, God bless, we were able to work out where everything was taken care of. He didn't buy it where I told him to buy it. He bought it off of Facebook, which is fine. I bought today a scaffold off of Facebook. But, it's also good to ask any questions because if I can help you with anything or even send you to somebody or link you up, it may be very beneficial.
Do you do certified cars?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do you do Porsche and Range Rover?
Yes. So all the vehicles I can pretty much. The reason why we only do new vehicles, which is why I was asking if anyone wants to start seeing me doing some comparison to some pre-owned vehicles, we can do that as well. But usually I do the new vehicles. They just get them in the showroom or whatnot. But we can do either of them, and we can do different comparisons. I mean, let us know if that's something that you guys are interested in. Jim from New York, thanks for answering my question personally. If you chose between Acura, finish reading.
If you chose between Acura, RDX,
all-wheel drive, super handle and all-wheel drive, actually. Yeah, I just had to say it to her. It's my daughter. Turbocharged engine compared to the Lexus NX 350 all-wheel drive turbo engine 2.4. I would go RDX all day long. You're gonna just have a lot more fun with that vehicle. I've actually had a neighbor. They bought an NX and they were kind of disappointed. They ended up getting rid of it in 9 months and they bought it new. So they lost quite a bit on the depreciation on that. With the Acura, I haven't had anyone that's bought an Acura displeased whenever they're buying something in its comparison. How do I get in contact with you if I want to buy a car? So my email is on the channel. I believe it's in the contact area. You'll just click onto it. And we also have a website. You can click onto the website, and that actually links directly to my phone on the website. But either of the two would be no problem at all. Your lease is up next year? Yeah. So, I mean, I know that because with most of the vehicles you've talked about, a lot of the high-end vehicles are starting to look to give a lot more deals because they're starting to get a lot more on the lot. Especially, I've seen now with Audi alone, they have increased quite a bit on their inventory. Range Rover itself, I mean, when we were at Range Rover a few weeks back, they had like 5 autobiographies, which is absolutely abnormal. Because even when I went to my certified SV dealership, because they have certifications for this, so some can only do SVs and some can't. So I have 2 teams that do it and 1 team that can't as of right now. Even with them, they never had that many. And that team, I've been with them since 2020, I believe.
What percent of new Bentleys are on a lease?
That's actually a pretty high number. I believe it's more in the near 70%. They don't usually sell that many of them. But one thing to keep in mind with leases, what companies do is they lease it to you. So it's kind of like a rent. You give the car back, then they resell it, or depending on the year, they can release it. So they literally make 2 and 3 times the money because you're paying them for the car, then they take it back, then someone else is paying for the car. And if you finance it through them, then they basically got their cake and ate it too.
Do you recommend a 2021 Range Rover or 2021
Cayenne, I would say that's a tough one. I mean, if you need third row, you can't get third row in the Range Rover for 2021. So if you're doing like an autobiography, I would go Range Rover. If you're going for performance, like meaning an S or up, then I would go Cayenne. How reliable is the Acura RDX 10-speed transmission? In the past, Acura has... Yes, so the 10-speed transmission, I actually talked to Ford about this stuff. I know Ford has nothing to do with Acura, but because of the transmission problems that they've been having, because we were touching bases with Acura and Ford. So they have cleaned it up quite a bit with their new variants. Ultimately, Acura has been doing a lot better with their transmissions. Engines, they don't really have hardly any issues with that. Living in hotter environments, you're going to expect to replace the compressor because typically what happens is what the heck is that thing called? The clutch, the AC clutch is actually what goes bad on the compressors. So if you live in hot environments, not usually the compressor itself, but the clutch. You can replace the clutch, but the reason why they replace the actual compressor is because it's cheaper. You've already done all the work. So to spend an extra $200-300, it makes no sense to keep something old. I don't need a third row. So I would say go Porsche and probably an S or a GTS. Yeah, that's the 2 I would probably look at for Porsche. That way you get some value too, because they hold their value a little bit better. Range Rover is going to kind of depreciate a little bit more so. And even if you look at like certified, I've seen a few where I worked with some dealerships that I did some reviews for them for their website that parts were broken. And they were like, can you just do a review around it? So I just gave specs. I didn't say whether I liked it or disliked it. And, I just showed like what you can get with it.
Do you recommend a 2021 X5?
So 20 was the year that they did the refresh, and then they've done some tweaks in the past. So as long as you're all right with not getting the full up to date, because now you have iDrive 8.5. So I know that the first iDrive 8.0, they had a lot of kinks and people were concerned because 8.5 literally came out at the same time, like maybe 6 months after, and they were selling them with or without the 2. So I would say as long as you're okay with the technology being a little bit dated, and the only reason why I say that is with BMW, you do have to pay premiums for like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. So ultimately, after so many years, you'll have to pay like $100 to get it for 4 more years.
How long can you extend it?
The warranty can be extended typically a year through the dealerships or 12,000 miles, sometimes unlimited miles, depending on the brand. And then if you want to do like aftermarket warranties. I usually don't recommend the aftermarket warranties only because they don't really give you the same value as the actual auto industry. So I was at Nissan this week, and there was a customer that bought the extended warranty outside of the dealership, and they did not cover his engine for his Nissan. And he was asking the dealership, he said, I bought it from you guys like 4 or 5 years ago, and the thing messed up and blah, 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 blah. And they said, well, they have to give you proof and this and that. I mean, the guy was just going through hoops. So I don't usually recommend getting those type of warranties after. I would recommend just getting a certified warranty.
Do you think that Acura will make it?
JS
Did we answer that?
just erased before I got to finish answering the question, but it's all right. The 2021 Range Rover technology is still good. So it is also outdated because the Pivi Pro, they have updated it quite a bit. In the new Pivi Pro, they got the new software yet again. With Range Rover, they always have a lot of glitch with their infotainment screen. So if you go Range Rover, one thing that a lot of people talk about on the forums, and even I do in the reviews, their infotainment screen is slow. It has glitch. It would be nice if it was a little bit more seamless.
Do you think that Acura will make a Type RDX?
Type S RDX. So that has been a lot of people's hopes. I don't foresee them not doing it, especially with this merge with Nissan. But in the same aspect, I would say if they do it, it probably would be in a couple years down the road, if that's something they're going to go to, because right now they're focusing on the Type. Well, actually, they might maybe in a year or so, because they just did the Type S for the so the TLX has one, and the Integra, which we have a review coming on that one, which was awesome because like $55,000. I mean, the comparable vehicles to that is like an M340i, in which that's $77,000. I get it, night and day difference in performance, but not so much night and day difference because the 0 to 60 is pretty damn quick. So if they did do one on an RDX, I mean, I think it would fly off. I mean, that thing is amazing.
How can
Bentayga sells such a dated. That is funny. Now that you say it, like Bentley, they do old luxury, and I think they just really cater towards that type of clientele.
On the forum, do people talk about reliability?
So usually reliability on like Bentleys and Rolls Royces, you're talking about services being like $2,000 to $5,000 a year. So if you have to fix something, it can be even more money than that. And for something so small, like what was it? A starter. There was a starter that went bad on one of the forums I was reading. It literally, you have to like have almost the whole, you got to open up a lot of stuff. So you got to take the whole lower bottom out. You got to pull the transmission out just to get to it. It's like right there hugged into the engine. So the labor alone is like $5,000, $6,000 for something like that.
What luxury SUV, if you had to choose to tour the national parks of the Western U.S.?
Well, Peter, I think I would, if it was a luxury vehicle, I would go maybe an Alpina, or I would go a Maybach. So that way I can enjoy the back seats and have somebody drive the vehicle for me, and they can do a little performance. It would be fun.
Is it true that the natural aspirated engine is better than the turbocharged engine? So
yes, anything naturally aspirated is better in longevity. As for performance, when you add the turbos, and the turbos also, so ultimately our engineering has changed. So I don't know if most people are familiar with like 80s model car. So anything in the 80s, they started doing a lot of turbos to get a lot of that performance. Well, now our technology is more advanced. That's why they do like turbo 3s, because they realize you could put a turbo in such a small engine and get a lot of power out of it. But with a naturally aspirated engine, you have to hit a certain RPM to get the full power, and then it just kind of goes forward. But with that being said, longevity-wise, you're always going to have more out of a naturally aspirated engine.
Are Range Rovers good for a teenager?
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're at that price point, yeah, just service is going to be expensive. And they're also going to be a little bit higher for insurance, as well as they're expensive to begin with.
Do you like the GLE?
I do like the GLE. I believe we posted the plug-in, and we also did it was a performance one, E-Performance, AMG E-Performance we did. And funny enough, when I did that vehicle, it actually popped the check engine light when I revved up the engine. I was very disappointed with it. But that being said, the GLE, I actually called a couple of my family members, and I was like, man, this car gets a 0 to 60 at like crazy speeds. And it has like, I think it's 600 and some horsepower. It's a crazy number. The torque is like nearly 700 or something like that. And it starts in the $80,000 price point. I was like, what the heck is Mercedes doing? Are they going crazy? Because no vehicle can compete with this. So I thought it was an awesome vehicle, but that check engine light was a little bit of a discouraging note.
What about the GLA Coupe?
The GLE Coupe, it's a great vehicle. But when I think about the GLE, I also remember the MLs. The ML is basically kind of the same structure. So if you put one side by side, it's just one of those cars that, I don't know, I just not a huge fan. I think they're cool looking. If you go into like the 53 AMG, it's sadly the worst performance compared to competition against Audi and BMW. The 63 obviously is 9-day difference, but when they're doing their AMG non-full AMG variants, they just don't give enough, and the price point is a little bit too high because you can go into Audi or BMW and get a lot better deal, and it's a quicker vehicle and it's a little bit more fun. Now Mercedes though is going to be very comfortable. The seats are, I feel, one of the most comfortable vehicles in class. But suspension-wise, I think Audi does a little bit better in the suspension work. So if you could get a blend of the performance of BMW, the comfort seats of Mercedes, and the suspension of an Audi, that'd be an amazing vehicle.
What about a CLE Coupe?
CLE Coupes, I mean, that's kind of a sweet spot vehicle. But again, I'm looking more for a convertible vehicle or to do something. I would like to actually do more of like another exotic or something to that level. It's just, I'm also with insurance, they keep increasing the price so much. I'm sure even in Texas, you have the same problem because here with two cars, I'm paying, I think, $370 now a month, which I used to pay not even $200 a month. Like they increased $70 this year a month, and last year was like almost $100. It's just crazy. So CarMax can be good. I don't always recommend them because a lot of the reasons why their deals are deals is because they already have accidents on them. So when you check the Carfax, you'll see that it's been a wrecked vehicle. Now, if it's a newer vehicle, I mean, just check the Carfax and see. I would cross shop between them and maybe some of the other dealerships just to see. SQ5 Sportback or a standard Q8? I would go standard Q8. The SQ5, it's a great everyday vehicle, but the Q8, it just, sorry, my chow chows. They get excited when they see their shadows. It's just something about the Q8. I think they do an excellent job. It has a lot more room in the interior. It's a lot more quiet in the interior, and you can get, I mean, a ton more features, especially with the sunshades in the rear. You could tow more. There's just a lot more capabilities, and you're pretty much right at the same price. So that was an actual great question, Peter, because, I mean, you figure you're around 77 and the other one's around 70-ish to 80 grand. So, yeah, I would go Q8.
Do you like the Alfa Romeo?
I do. We linked up with the team with Alfa Romeo in Lakeland. Unfortunately, they have decided to stop selling them. They did have some, but they did not recommend doing the reviews because Alfa is going more into discontinuing a lot of their lines in North America. So they're only going to have maybe a couple of vehicles. So we are on search to get another team. I like Alfa. I think they do a great job. The only thing I dislike is how Alfa has so much performance. It's kind of like what BMW does with their M Sport variants. They give you so much value there that it doesn't make sense sometimes to go to a full M. So with Alfa, it doesn't make sense sometimes to go to like a Maserati because you get so much performance and bang for your buck with the Alfa Romeo. So I think we've Had an awesome time with everybody. We're going to close up the live stream this week. We look forward to doing it again next week. Please check out the comment tabs. Let us know any vehicles you guys would like to see. We are constantly trying to add new teams and more vehicles to the channel. Check out the membership. We also have 2 different tiers right now where we're going to be doing shorts, as well as check out the Instagram and TikTok, because we're going to start adding around 2 to 4 different videos there also. Have you ever driven a Acura RDX all-wheel drive? Yes, we have the Acura. We have the CX-5. We have all those. I didn't do a comparison, which thank you for bringing that up. We will try to see how we can link that up. Both of my teams, though, are a little bit different in distance, but maybe we can pull a pre-owned one so we can do the difference between the two. The CX-5 Turbo, awesome vehicle, very comfortable. We have quite a bit of reviews on that. Take care, James. Thank you for watching, and thank you to everybody that came in. Thank you, Peter, and thank you guys again. Have an excellent weekend, and we'll see you on the next review.